Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and Classic World of Warcraft has been super popular, and there's a lot of people playing Classic, but I'm pretty sure all of you were well aware of that. A lot of people either came back to the game, a game they used to play, or a game they played on some like a private server, but also a lot of new people been trying it. And so far, with a few days of the game being out, it has gripped so many people so deep into the game that no one wants to leave the servers. Yeah, the server queues are still pretty bad. But not everybody is convinced whether they should give Classic World of Warcraft a try. Is it a game for you? Is it a game that you will enjoy? And is it a game that might be worth sticking long term into? Or is this just a fad and it's all going to wane very quickly in just a little bit of time? In today's video, I want to clue you guys in on my experience in order to help you guys figure out if Classic World of Warcraft might be a game for you to invest whether money or time into when it comes to World of Warcraft. Trust me when I say this, I'm someone who doesn't really like trying new things. When it comes to going to places to eat or maybe the type of entertainment I enjoy, the genre of music I like, I don't really go outside of my boundaries. I am somebody who likes familiarity. So, World of Warcraft Classic, let's say for someone who never played this game or never tried it before, the vanilla World of Warcraft compared to the other expansions, is this game worth giving a go? And I feel like it definitely is a different beast. You will notice pretty early on the differences between the newest expansion of World of Warcraft and Classic World of Warcraft, and in some cases it might be jarring. So it definitely is a different experience, but I think it's something that everybody should at least dip their toes into. And if by this alone you're not convinced, let me dive a little bit deeper on my experience in Classic so far. Whenever the server queues allow me to log on, I actually have been having quite a lot of fun on my Undead Rogue. The experience has been fun, but not in the same way that BFA has been. It, I would say, is a different fun of experience. Now, I'm not gonna dive into what the servers were like on launch because that was hectic. It was insane to figure out what the hell is going on, and getting quests done and killing mobs was almost impossible, but somehow I was able to claw my way through the starting zone areas. Off the bat, in the starting zone, you'll notice how different the game is. First of all, if you're someone who's used to quest markers being all over the place and quests basically telling you where you need to go, vanilla World of Warcraft was not like this. Of course, you can get add-ons to help you with this, but baseline the game, you actually had to read the quests. You had to figure out what the quests asked you, and usually they tell you exactly what you need to do in the last paragraph or the text box, but it does force you to read the quest, and you do get involved more with the story. Unlike how BFA does it, where they usually do some sort of narrative experience and certain characters will tell you exactly what quest you're doing or a reason why it's important. It does make it a little bit of a challenge to figure out where you need to go on your map. So planning things out ahead of time can be difficult if you don't have some sort of a guide on the other monitor or an add-on tracking and telling you exactly where you need to go, which can be fun in its own way, but definitely slows down the experience. Obviously, the level experience is going to be much slower because of that, if you are having to do everything manually. It is kind of fun if you're someone who likes to figure out quests. Like, these quests are not the most confusing thing in the world, but sometimes it'll be things like the quest will ask you to find a bookshelf or a pile of books, and you'll be looking around for things and you don't have anything outlined. In BFA, things are outlined for you clearly in order to know exactly what items you need, any items that are important for you to get on with your day. In Classic, none of those things are outlined. Maybe some of them sometimes will have some sort of a shimmer around them, but you really do have to look. So it's not like some crazy, figuring out puzzles, mind games going on in quests, but it does take a little bit more effort than your average quest would in the newest expansions. Past the quests themselves, and a lot of the quests are going to be like this in order where you have to figure out exactly who you have to kill, what you have to loot, where you have to go, who you have to talk to. The quest markers on the map don't really help either, but also the combat is going to be another pivotal thing that you will experience in Classic WoW. In Classic, I would describe the combat a little bit more of a dice roll, like old school D&D, like you're rolling for initiative, rolling to see if you get dodged or parried, or if you miss an attack, or you get a critical, and most of the combat, at least from a melee class perspective, really comes down to kind of auto attacks. At least as the experience you get for melee early on, until you get more talents and more abilities unlocked, and then the experience could be a little bit better. But we are talking about the first few levels. And to describe the caster experience, casters are a little bit different. Casters might be a damage over time caster where they pull a bunch of dots on enemies, and they'll use an auto attack ability from a wand to basically have a ranged auto attack, but it can be used at ranged or at melee. So like a priest or a warlock will put a bunch of dots on enemies and then will just wand them to death. Or sometimes you'll be like a mage. You'll try to burn the enemy down before they get you, so you will exhaust quite a lot of mana just to make sure that the enemy dies before they can even reach you. Does mean you have to recharge your mana afterwards. Or classes like hunters and warlocks that can go for a pet playstyle where they have their pet tank things for you, and then you kind of tickle the enemy down, but not super quickly, so you don't draw aggro. So it ends up being probably the easiest experience, but still it does come down into a little bit more of downtime, into more of a slower playstyle, and in some cases more auto attacks or downtime in other areas. And that downtime is going to be in your consumables. You're going to have to use a lot of consumables in order to quest. At first, it doesn't really feel like a lot, but the higher level you get to, the more you have to rely on things like food and water if you're someone who's a mana user, and finding racials and other abilities and items to help you maintain your health or mana so you can keep trucking along. It does get a little bit lame to have to exhaust all your mana or most of your health with every single fight, and some mobs do feel really challenging, and sometimes you just get really screwed on RNG with your auto attacks, and let's say you get parried too much or you miss too many of your abilities and now you're having to recover. The downtime of having to eat food does feel a little bit annoying at first, but you really do end up getting the pace for the game. The pacing, we can talk about that too. Pacing for vanilla World of Warcraft, and I've had this described to me before, but I never really understood what they meant until I get to play it. It's more of a marathon endurance test rather than a sprint. In Battle for Azeroth and newer expansions, you can just kind of just blaze on to max level. If you have a goal to get to 120, you can really just grind through the quests, the dungeons, whatever you need in order to get there. In classic World of Warcraft, you may have the will and the want to get to max level, but the way that the game is set up, it doesn't really give you too many options where you can just break the rules. Between having your character sit down, eat food, or drink water for mana, you have to find ways to get around that eventually, because every time you engage in a fight that lasts a couple seconds and then having to spend more seconds eating and drinking to get your resources all back up does get a little bit grating. So then you find ways around it. You are using either racials or other small consumables like health potions in order to kind of keep yourself from one mob into the next, and these mobs can be challenging. So at least in the early levels, it is more about trying to pace yourself and getting yourself into the next enemy and the next enemy, and having as smooth of transition from one mob into the next, and as less downtime. You can't really speed up the experience, but you can try to make it as fast as it needs to, or not as slow as it usually is. This definitely gets alleviated at higher levels. As you gain levels, as you grow with your character, you do get far stronger. This is why we see a lot of mages running around and AoE nuking enemies using frost spells. They'll use frost spells from Blizzard to Cone of Cold to the Roots in order to slow enemies down, and then they'll simply kite them around and AoE nuke them without enemies even touching them. So you do have classes that are really good at stuff like that. You do have classes that will do AoE grinding as well. They're all pretty good at it, but that does come with time, so this is not something you're gonna see anytime soon. So the whole experience of starting from the bottom and really climbing up is something that classic World of Warcraft really embodies. Newer expansions of World of Warcraft give you a little bit more early gratification. Now, of course, there's a lot of things, even in BFA patch 8.2, there's a lot of things for you to look forward to and work for long term. You could set up a lot of goals and get gratification out of a long-term overtime achievements, whether it is grinding out for your essences, or might be for reputation or for mounts and stuff, could be for challenging content like PvP or Mythic Plus, or maybe the Mythic Raids and trying to kill a Jara. So you have a mix of things that take time, but also things that are challenging, and it's something of a long-term goal. But there's also plenty of things in newer World of Warcraft expansions that give you that satisfaction off the bat, the instant gratification. So some people simply prefer stuff like this. In classic World of Warcraft, there's very little instant gratification. I mean, unless you're someone who just simply loves getting crits on your abilities, which could get very exciting, but in terms of getting your character up and running, getting the quest done, long quest chains that give you very little in rewards, All those are spaced out so far apart, and even some of the quests, how you'll have to run from A, then all the way to B, then all the way back to A. It feels like there's a bit of backtracking, but there is a reward at the end of it. It's just the road to the end of that reward does take a little bit longer. So if you're someone who loves slower gratification and really working towards things, I think vanilla World of Warcraft Classic WoW does that a little bit better, while BFA has aspects where you can actually get yourself some long-term goals that you set for yourself for that long-term slow gratification. There are avenues for quick gratification. Classic just simply doesn't have those avenues to begin with. Class quests is another thing I really liked, at least the one on my rogue. They do give you a little bit of an idea of, oh man, you actually have a little bit of a story to your class. Right now, BFA, I think, does a really good job story-wise with narrating a lot of events. You have all these different characters narrating anything from world quests to popular and actually important events in the game that you really do prolong and you are affecting as the champion. But in Classic, you don't really have any narration. But the quests, if you read them and you look at some of the little voice lines, or I guess text lines that some characters have, it really does build you up. Like for rogues, as an undead rogue, it really builds you up as a Deathstalker, which is an elite force of undead rogues that work for the undead, Sylvanas, and the Horde. And they really build you up by starting you off with small things like intercepting a courier, intercepting his package, and then whoever the package is supposed to be delivered to, you're impersonating as the courier. And it's small little things that you would see in another game like Skyrim, for example, but it is there in Classic WoW. You just really have to read the text lines, read the quest lines, and then it really gets you involved. And it's all thematic and really cool, at least the rogue part. I don't know about other classes, but I would expect that if the rogues have this much carefully crafted little bits of story, I would imagine other classes have a little bit more or less of this. I know that Warlocks apparently have some of the best class quests possible. It is definitely something to look forward to. It's very reminiscent of Legion Order Halls when it comes to every class having an Order Hall and then a specific quest line for that class. Or even better yet, when we had the artifact weapons and we had spec-specific quest lines where you had to do certain things that your spec was really good at, or better yet, like Mage Tower, where it was just so specialized to who you are, what your character is. But here it's just really just baseline class, but also maybe a little bit of a race combo to play into the storyline. Overall, Classic World of Warcraft is a much slower experience that is a little bit more brutal. It is going to be slower combat and enemies really are challenging. Because of that, you do have a little bit more of this community sense that you may be able to put together. As in, when you see somebody else in trouble, you really do want to help them, because just about everybody who played Classic so far has been in a situation where they found themselves against overwhelming odds and then their character died and they had to run all the way back from the graveyard, and there's still a good chance, but by the time that they get back to their body, they have to eat food, drink water, just get the resources back up and running, and then try again against this impossible foe and most likely still fail. While most people have been able to experience this struggle of having to run all the way back to your body, which feels so punishing, other players are a lot more likely to actually help you because of that. Because of this common struggle that everybody has, everybody is generally more open to pairing up and doing stuff together. Some people are even more social. I found a lot of people on Classic so far that have been very antisocial, no matter how much I want to engage with them, no matter how much I want to carry a conversation. Some people will just throw me an invite, we'll get a quest done together, they'll kick me out of the group immediately as soon as the quest is over, and they'll go on with their day without ever saying a word. But on average, most people have reported that they do get a social experience. You can find people to make friends with on Classic, to quest together in Classic, and maybe even join guilds together if that is the experience you want. So you do have a little bit of this different camaraderie. BFA doesn't really have the similar thing, because most of the challenge, it is expected that you should be able to do it solo. It is kind of designed for you to be able to do it solo. So it is different. I won't say it's better, but I do like the difference that you have here, how the world feels a lot more challenging, and because of the punishing mechanics of dying, it does kind of build some sort of a bond between players. Like, yeah, we've all been there, we know how much it sucks. I kind of want to help this guy because I don't want him to go through what I had to go through. So those are, first of all, the very first impressions that I had of Classic World of Warcraft, how it's different from BFA, everything that I could cover off the top of my head in this video. So I do wonder how you guys feel about Classic World of Warcraft right now, especially those that have never gave it a go. Does this sound exciting? Does this not sound exciting? And you know what? I feel like there's no wrong answer. Some people just like the newer version of what MMOs are like, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. As long as the developers keep putting in the effort into it, as long as there's something to look forward to in the game, as long as there's something you enjoy out of the game and have fun playing it, I feel like that's all that matters. But I do like the different contrasts that Classic World of Warcraft is able to give us versus current retail WoW. And in many cases, I feel like it's a good idea that both of those versions of the game exist, because it could really put some fire in the bellies of developers for any future expansion to hopefully try to do something that Classic World of Warcraft back in the day could also do, to be just as good as Classic, or maybe as close as it can as the glory days of vanilla World of Warcraft. I think it's a good idea and something of a goal for anyone to strive towards. But anyway, guys, you let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about Classic World of Warcraft? What are your thoughts on the experiences that I have so far? Do you think it's a game for you, especially someone who hasn't played? Or if you're someone who is currently enjoying World of Warcraft, what are some of the words of advice you would give for someone if they want to give Classic a go? So what are some of the things that you look forward to, or some of the reasons why they should play it? Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.